Offensive line play is one of the most important things in fantasy football that not nearly enough people talk about. Now, personally, I can't pretend that I'm an offensive line guru, that I'm an offensive line expert, but PFF just published their top 10 and worst 10 offensive lines for this upcoming season. So what I want to do in this video is I want to go through, look at the 10 worst offensive lines for 2022 and come away with some fantasy football stances from it. Maybe, just maybe, in Chicago, things are going to be so bad you can't draft Justin Fields. You can't draft David Montgomery. But we'll get to that team in just 1 second. Before we dive into it, go down there, drop a like in this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football, and I don't want to waste your time. Let's go to the 10th worst offensive line this upcoming season, the Miami Dolphins. Now, I understand you don't want to be on this video at all if you're a starting running back, but Chase Edmonds here, in my opinion, has some pretty good news because everybody already knows how bad this Miami Dolphins offensive line was a year ago. This was one of, if not the worst offensive lines in the NFL. This has led to really no production value whatsoever out of the running back position in Miami last year. And at the same time, a lot of people that are fans of Tua Tagovailoa, while I'm not necessarily a massive Tua guy, they want to blame all his early career struggles on the horrendous offensive line play that he had. That the fact is he had a bottom 3 unit over the past 2 seasons. So with the key additions that Miami's been able to make this offseason, some people who believe in Tua Tagovailoa, some people who believe in this Miami Dolphins overall, think that you're all of a sudden going to have an improvement with the passing efficiency of the offense, leading to less stacked boxes, leading to less pressure for Tua Tagovailoa in a more productive offense overall. Now, what I want to do is I don't want to just talk about the fact that, oh, it's going to be a bad offensive line. Let's go through and let's look at the actual price points for these players. And the most important player, obviously, is going to be the running back here with Chase Edmonds. And if we head over, Chase Edmonds went from being, in my opinion, easily one of the best values in fantasy football. If we look a couple weeks ago, Chase Edmonds was a running back going as a low-end running back 3, high-end running back 4, where now he has risen up draft boards considerably, now going as the running back 32, directly behind Kareem Hunt, directly behind Damian Harris, directly behind Rashaad Penny. And I'm completely fine drafting Chase Edmonds over a few of these key names. We'll get to Penny near the end of this video, because if we also look at the different styles of running backs that are going to be able to overcome poor offensive line plays, we need to look at where high value touches in fantasy football come from. At the running back position, the high value touches are going to be the targets out of the backfield and the touches in the red zone. And those touches in the red zone are going to be directly affected by offensive line play, just given the fact that if you have a really bad offensive line, there'll be less red zone opportunities overall for the entire offense. But those targets out of the backfield, they're not really going to go anywhere. If anything, if you have bad offensive line play, if Tua Tagovailoa has to get the ball off early, you would assume that the passing down running back in Miami is going to benefit. And if we look at the other RBs in this backfield, y'all know I've never been a fan of Raheem Mostert. We've talked about it time and time again. Thank God the fantasy football community has realized how dumb they were a month ago drafting Raheem Mostert like in the 13th round. He has fallen to now he's a 17th, 18th round selection on Underdog Fantasy. A running back that's 30 years old that has one game in his entire NFL career with 20 or more carries. Not interesting. And also not a good pass catching running back. Sony Michel is also going to be competing for this running back 2 job in Miami, where maybe one of these guys in Raheem Mostert or Sony Michel earns that running back 2 job, and they have a Jamal Williams type role with what you saw with Jamal Williams in both Detroit as well as Green Bay, and that they are getting touches on a week-to-week basis, but those are carries between the 20-yard lines that don't necessarily translate to fantasy production. I think that you're going to have a very hard time seeing a ceiling for either Sony Michel or Raheem Mostert, even if Chase Edmonds were to go down to injury, because neither running back has a decent receiving skill set. The only running back that can catch balls out of the backfield here in Miami is going to be Chase Edmonds. He's getting paid the most. He has had the best flashes and opportunities to be the starter out of any of these guys. I'm completely fine drafting Chase Edmonds. Despite his offense still having a bottom 10 unit this upcoming season, it will be dramatically improved from where it was a year ago. And now let's go over to a team that, hell, has a running back 1, the Carolina Panthers. Carolina coming in on this list at 9. Now, What am I supposed to say? We just got done talking about Chase Edmonds being able to overcome his poor offensive line play because of his great role as a pass-catching running back out of his backfield. I don't know if you know this about Christian McCaffrey, but if I go through and if I pull up what we have on his profile in our 2022 fantasy football draft guide, I don't want to speak on this that long at all. It's Christian McCaffrey. What am I supposed to say? This is a running back that had almost a 24% team target share in 2019. He's one of the best passing down running backs the NFL has ever seen. He'll be able to overcome it. DJ Moore's a wide receiver that operates closer to the line of scrimmage. Hell, I'm not worried about bad offensive line play for him either. I don't think this affects the Carolina Panthers. Maybe it affects Robbie Anderson with those deeper targets with Baker Mayfield not having time to let those develop. But overall, I'm going to be primarily ignoring this. Going over to our 8th team, this came as a surprise to me because if we head over to Real Money Fantasy Football Drafts right now, and I just search this on Underdog Fantasy, give me 1 second. And as I search this, let me tell you how great Underdog Fantasy is. Over there on Underdog Fantasy, they've had more Real Money Fantasy Football Drafts than pretty much any other site this offseason. Now, I sadly cannot say that with 100% confidence, but they've had over 1 million real money drafts on Underdog Fantasy this offseason because it's the best place to draft your 2022 fantasy football teams. I've drafted over 400 myself because it's so much fun. And when you go and sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK with a minimum of a $10 deposit, you are going to get our 2022 fantasy football draft guide. You are getting almost 300 pages of quality information plus my 2022 rankings for a $10 deposit that they will match dollar for dollar up to 100%. So it's essentially free for you. Find the link in the description, use promo code FLOCK. But if we look at the Arizona Cardinals over there on Underdog Fantasy, James Conner, a 3rd round selection. Hollywood Brown, an ADP of 37. Kyler Murray, ADP of 59. Obviously, Hopkins being pushed down due to the injury. Zach Ertz, 108. Rondale Moore, 118. These Arizona Cardinals players are expensive. Now, there are a couple reasons behind this. You're looking at Arizona as a team that should be top 5 in the NFL in pace of play, almost guaranteed this upcoming season. Cliff Kingsbury plays as if he is a 12-year-old on Madden. I mean, this team is just snapping that ball so damn early that they are going to have so many plays with the efficiency of Kyler Murray, specifically at the beginning portion of the season. This should be an elite fantasy offense, almost regardless of the offensive line. But it is noteworthy because I've heard a lot of people in the comment section going, okay, Mason, I don't get why James Conner goes in the 3rd. This was a running back that dominated last season. He should be an early 2nd round pick. He should be up there with guys like Joe Mixon. No, this is one of the reasons, okay? He's playing behind a bottom 10 offensive line. So let's pump the brakes a little bit in terms of the James Conner round 2 hype. I think you can draft him in round 3, however. I just want to explain that's where his price is. And now going over to our 7th team, we are going to have the Jacksonville Jaguars here. With Jacksonville, I can't tell you not to go ahead and draft Travis Etienne because going back to our discussion at the very beginning of this video, what running backs will be able to overcome poor offensive line play? Running backs getting targeted out of the backfield, running backs with their receiving skill set. I've talked for 2 years now about Travis Etienne being the next DeAndre Swift, who is the next Aaron Jones, who is right in line with Alvin Kamara as a running back, getting every single valuable touch out of their backfield in terms of the targets and touches in the red zone. I have to admit, though, with James Conner avoiding the PUP list, we have to lower down Etienne ever so slightly because there is the outside chance that James Conner does still have the red zone role, which, oh my gosh, would severely cap the upside of Travis Etienne if that's going to be the case, especially if we should expect a bad year for the Jacksonville Jaguars in general, which based on the efficiency we had from Lawrence as a rookie combined with the poor offensive line, I understand you're getting the coaching change. Still not great, not great. Now, this was one of the biggest surprises for me. What have we come to know over the past 5, 4, 3, what have we come to know over the past 5 years? We've come to know the Tennessee Titans as a team with one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. PFF coming into this season has the Tennessee Titans as the 6th worst offensive line in the NFL. Now, I am not an offensive line expert. As I've said, we are relying on their rankings for this, but this may have massive implications. Now, y'all have seen my rankings. Y'all have seen that I do have Derrick Henry lower than most people. Like, for example, I have Joe Mixon ahead of Derrick Henry this upcoming season Because if we're looking at Derrick Henry, he fits the profile of a running back that, hell yes, he can go and crush. With an elite offensive line, Derrick Henry can get to 130 rushing yards a game. We've seen that in his range of outcomes. But if the rushing efficiency is not there, and he is not a running back that's going to be seeing more than 10% of his team's target share, he's going to be closer to about 4 or 5%. No usage as a pass catcher. Plus the departure of A.J. Brown from Tennessee, historically one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL. This is very worrisome for the Tennessee Titans offense overall. I think this is very worrisome for Ryan Tannehill in your regular shallow 2022 redraft format. You're not taking Tannehill, so it doesn't even matter. I think this is very worrisome for anybody trying to take Derrick Henry inside the top 5, try to chase that dragon. Please don't this year. I've said it once, I've said it again. There is a tier of 5 players at the very top of the first round. Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, whatever order you want them in. Do not sneak a Derrick Henry inside that top 5. You have too many red flags with the offensive line downgrades, combined with the fact that he's going to be 28 at the very start of the season. He's been 28 for like 6 months now. No running back that's 28 is going this high in fantasy football drafts. We haven't seen it in years. Now, let's go over to our 5th worst offensive line. Let's look at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I haven't really been drafting too much Tyler Algier this offseason. Now, you're looking at reports, some beat reporters saying, oh, Tyler Algier, he may push for the starting running back job. He may have a very large role in this offense. I wouldn't be too surprised if that happens. I mean, if we go ahead and look at our Cordell Patterson chapter in our draft guide, Cordell Patterson, slowly but surely, he went from a running back that at the beginning of the offseason, we were saying not to draft, that he was overrated, to now becoming one of my most drafted running backs in fantasy, as he has fallen about 4 rounds in ADP. He is now going as the running back 38 after a running back 15 finish last year. But that's besides the point. We're just looking at his profile to see that there have been 166 carries leaving this offense with the departure of both Mike Davis and Wayne Gallman. And that's with Cordell Patterson getting 9.5 carries a game. That's with Cordell Patterson being the running back 15 last year. So I completely agree. Tyler Algier is probably going to have a role. He's probably going to step into what Mike Davis did. However, are we wanting the between the tackles grinder? Are we wanting the prototypical running back in Atlanta that's going to see the carries between the tackles, that is going to rely on touchdown upside when Cordell Patterson is going to be used as the passing down running back? I don't know about you, but I do not want a first and second down running back that was drafted on day 3 in one of the worst offenses in the NFL with one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. I don't really see the upside for Tyler Algier. Now, if there were to be an injury to Cordell Patterson, the man's in his 30s, I think it's possible, then all of a sudden Tyler Algier could be used as a pass catcher and he could have access to those high value touches in Atlanta. But I understand Cordell Patterson won't be the running back 15 again in fantasy. But to push him down to the running back 38, that seems a little bit aggressive. In a non-PPR format, sure, draft him that low. But like I said, we have a video from like 6 weeks ago, maybe 7 weeks ago at this point, of me calling Cordell Patterson one of the worst picks in fantasy. And now I think people have gone way too far pushing him down. He's going behind Tyler Boyd in drafts. Draft Cordell Patterson at this price. Now, our next team coming in at 4 is a surprise, and it did get me worried. We have the Las Vegas Raiders here. With the Raiders, I've drafted a lot of Josh Jacobs. If I'm heading over to Underdog Fantasy, looking at this Josh Jacobs price point, Josh Jacobs is currently the running back 22 going in the 6th round. He has an ADP in the 6th round, despite over the past 3 years, Josh Jacobs, while he hasn't demonstrated the elite level ceiling, he's averaged the running back 15 finish over the past 3 seasons. He's increased his role as a receiving running back every single year over the past 3 seasons. And to go along with this, maybe this is the best version of the Las Vegas Raiders offense we've seen in that time period with Davante Adams coming over. So I'm looking at the discount you're getting for Josh Jacobs. And in the majority of these drafts, I'm sorry, I'm taking him in the 6th round. I'm drafting Josh Jacobs over Adam Thielen. I'm drafting him over Elijah Moore. I'm drafting him over Amari Cooper. I'm drafting him over Devontae Smith. Yes, I'm taking Josh Jacobs very often in this range. But seeing where the Las Vegas Raiders put this offensive line as a bottom 5 unit, I can't ignore it. I have to be concerned because Josh Jacobs, while he had an 11.5% team target share last season, I think it's easy to see why. You had Darren Waller missing 6 weeks. You had Henry Ruggs going to prison halfway through the year. So Derek Carr had the option to either give Hunter Renfrow 15 targets a game. He was the only person on this team. Or funneled the ball through Zay Jones and Bryan Edwards or Foster Moreau. There was no other choice but to look at Josh Jacobs as a passing down running back out of the backfield when your second best option in the receiving game is Zay Jones. So if we look at the target share, taking the bump up for Jacobs this past season, I think it's going to look like an outlier if we compare it to the rest of his career. I think the role in the receiving game takes a step back for Jacobs, and I probably need to reevaluate how often I'm drafting him. I probably need to look at a running back going right next to him in Elijah Mitchell and start drafting Elijah Mitchell a little bit more and Josh Jacobs a little bit less. But let's head over to our next offensive line. Let's go to number 3. They were a bad unit last year. You have the Pittsburgh Steelers really getting at Najee Harris. Now, this is something I want to key in on. I understand a lot of people have come out and said, oh, you know what? The only reason Deontay Johnson has averaged 10.5 targets a game over the past 2 years is given the fact that Ben Roethlisberger had to get the ball out quickly. He couldn't let those routes for Chase Claypool develop downfield. I mean, he had to dump it off to Deontay Johnson. Okay, you think Trubisky is going to do anything different? You think Kenny Pickett is going to do anything different when they have a bottom 3 offensive line? I think that they are still going to favor the targets a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, try to get the ball off quickly with a bad unit like this. But let's not talk about Deontay Johnson. Y'all know that's someone I love at his price. Instead, let's look at Najee Harris. With Harris, I think you can definitely see the fact that he will have a cap ceiling. This should be a bad offense overall with this quarterback play. You're also seeing the offensive line probably not allowing Najee Harris to have massive holes and break off those big runs. And to go along with it, we don't even know if Najee Harris would have the speed to break off any long runs if the opportunity arose. So across the board, Najee Harris looks like a high floor, low upside running back. And when you're taking him in the middle of the first round, I think it's a very difficult selling point. Now, if you were to take Najee Harris after those top 5 players that we talked about, there you have such a sharp drop off with the tiers where you're looking at a lot of running backs that have those offensive line marks. You're looking at a lot of running backs that have red flags like Derrick Henry, like Dalvin Cook. I mean, Austin Eckler, I think his 20 touchdowns are going to regress this upcoming season. I do have Eckler ranked ahead of Harris. But if you're a Najee Harris fan, I'm not going to fault you for taking him at the end of round 1. Our next running back, I think, is in a very similar boat, however, and you're currently getting him in the 5th round instead. David Montgomery. With David Montgomery, what's funny is he's actually at a finish under his belt higher than what we had with Najee Harris last year, where 2 years ago with David Montgomery in one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL on a team that was throwing up complete trash at the quarterback position, David Montgomery was the running back 6, only behind Kamara, only behind Dalvin, only behind Henry, only behind Aaron Jones and James Robinson. Now, I will say he is going to be in a horrendous situation this upcoming season. This should be a bad offense with no receiving options whatsoever. And with the second worst offensive line in the NFL, I'm sorry. I know I've always been the Justin Fields hater. Yeah, I told you to draft Trey Lance over him in Dynasty. I apologize for being smart, okay? Just a joke, okay? But let's move on by that. Here, you're looking at David Montgomery in an offense that most likely is going to fail. You can't be starting Velus Jones Jr. as your second wide receiver and have an offensive line this poor. However, how much different is this situation than Pittsburgh, where David Montgomery is going to see damn near every single touch out of this backfield? David Montgomery is going to see damn near every single target. He should have a larger target share potentially than Najee Harris, given the fact that this receiving core is so bad, possibly going to be Josh Jacobs from last season. So if we were to draft a high floor, low ceiling player, I think it's going to be better to do so at the beginning of round 5 in David Montgomery compared to at the end of round 1 with Najee Harris. But up to you. I haven't really been drafting that much Najee just because I'm usually taking Stephon Diggs in that range. Now, going to the worst offensive line in the NFL. Let's look at the Seattle Seahawks. Now, let me give you my exposures on Rashaad Penny as well as my exposures on Kenneth Walker, because I have to admit, I've probably been an idiot drafting Kenneth Walker. I still am going to stand by it given the price point that you currently have. I have, right now, 14% Kenneth Walker in these drafts. Now, Penny, I have absolutely none of. Penny, I have about 6%. I'm actually very surprised to see that mark. I guess I was drafting him more before his price rose. I think if you're looking at the discrepancy between these two running backs, it doesn't make sense. I understand Rashaad Penny had the elite stretch at the very end of last year. I've said it every single year since he came into the NFL. If you look at Rashaad Penny in our prospect profile, Rashaad Penny has always had the talent. He's always had the ability. The only ability that he has not been able to consistently show is availability. This is a running back that will miss time due to injury, one of the most injury-prone players in the NFL. They draft a replacement at the beginning of the second round in this year's NFL draft. However, if we're looking at ADP right now on Underdog Fantasy, where we need to be prioritizing production in weeks 15, 16, and 17, we need to be prioritizing production for those fantasy football playoffs. Who do you think is going to have the role? Do you think it's going to be the running back on a one-year deal who's out the door? Or do you think it's going to be the running back that's on his rookie contract, was a very good prospect coming in the NFL, and you have Kenneth Walker right now with an ADP of 108 compared to Rashaad Penny at 90? Please fade Penny, because we have not seen Penny catch passes in the NFL. I don't think Kenneth Walker is going to do it either, but you're getting a cheaper cost with Kenneth Walker. We can potentially say he does have some passing down upside, because it's not like he's been in the NFL since 2018 and has never demonstrated that passing down upside. And if you're playing for the Seattle Seahawks, it's going to be very hard to be a Rashaad Penny, be a first and second down grinder, going at pick 90, and return value in one of the league's worst offenses with one of the league's, if not the worst offensive line in the NFL. Now, of course, thank you so much for being a part of the Flock Sport in the channel. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you got something from it. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to have some fun drafting, if you want to draft with me on the live stream, draft with people in a public lobby, draft with your friends, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. When you use promo code FLOCK, you'll get our 2022 draft guide, you'll get our rankings, and you'll get a 100% deposit match. That link is in the description. But thank you. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day.